Thank you. Thank you. General Linguel, distinguished guests, it really is an honor for me to be here today. And I don't take lightly or for granted the fact that you could have had anybody up here, but you chose Mike Garret. General Goldfein, it's great to see you again, sir, and I bring greetings from your former headquarters at Shaw Air Force Base. I need to recognize a couple of other senior leaders who are not here due primarily to crisis response. Lieutenant General Tim Cadavy, who was just in Kuwait a couple weeks ago for our last J-Mark. Also, Lieutenant General Dan Hokanson and Sergeant Major Chris Kepner, who joined us in Kuwait last month for the transfer of authority for Task Force Spartan as the 35th Santa Fe Infantry Division of the Kansas National Guard assumed command and control of Operation Spartan Shield from the 29th Infantry Division, from National Guard formations from Northern Virginia and Maryland. Let me offer my sincere compliments to those who organized this conference. Your hospitality and professionalism shines in every detail of this exposition, from the setup here to the reception last night to the extensive exhibits that combine to convey your theme that America's National Guard is the nation's indispensable force. The 139th National Guard Association of the United States General Conference has been a truly remarkable experience, and thank you for including me. This picture, and when I look at it, and as I walk down the hall, Sergeant Major Ed Garret would have been pretty proud of his boy. I am the product of a military family. My mom was a dedicated military spouse who raised me and my sisters as we followed my dad, a career NCO, and eventually a Command Sergeant Major around the Army. Command Sergeant Major Garret set the example each and every day for his units, for his non-commissioned officers, and for his family. My dad was my division Command Sergeant Major when I was a second lieutenant during my first assignment with the 24th Infantry Division at Fort Stewart, Georgia. And my professional career, in some respects, has been 33 years of striving to live up to the expectations that he had, as well as to the example that he set. His philosophy was basic leadership 101. You don't walk past a mistake. You don't expect your subordinates to do that which you do not do yourself, and you lead from the front. To him, life was and is a matter of meeting standards. He met them, and he expected us to meet them as well. You know, I've tried to pass that on to our son, Mikey, who's a first year at West Point this year. You know, at some point soon, he'll make his branch choice and be commissioned next May. Our daughter, Samantha, also committed to a life of service. She just began her career as a teacher. She took her first job in Charlotte, North Carolina, after graduating this summer from Lenoir-Rhyne. You know, my wife, Lorelei, and I cannot be prouder of the adults our children are becoming and the tradition of service to which they've both committed. You know, my family, my dad, my wife, who's been our anchor, my kids, both who've learned early on to put service to others above themselves, is really the foundation. And if you really want to know who Mike Garret is, it is because of them. You know, each day over the last 22 months, it's been my privilege to command 3rd Army, United States Army Central, the theater army for the Central region. I'm going to begin by telling you an absolute truth, and I believe this with all my heart. The Army would long ago have failed as an institution without the contributions of the total Army, our National Guard, and our Army Reserve. You know, United States Army Central is responsible to the Secretary of the Army and General Milley for administrative control of all Army forces employed in the region. My command is also responsible to General Votel, the Central Command Commander, for operational control of Army formations deployed to the region. We are currently supporting 3 named operations: Operations Freedom Sentinel in Afghanistan, Operation Inherent Resolve in Iraq and Syria, and Operation Spartan Shield in the Central Gulf and Greater Levant. We also continue to support the multinational force observers in the northern Sinai. As was briefly mentioned, our area of responsibility extends from Egypt in the west to Pakistan in the east, from Kazakhstan in the north to Yemen in the south. It consists of 20 countries across 6 time zones, an area roughly 1.5 times the size of the continental United States. The United States Central Command's area of responsibility is, by most estimates, just as strategically important as it is volatile. While accounting for 60% of the global oil reserves and 45% of the planet's natural gas, the region is the linchpin in our global economy. Its turmoil dates back to the fall of the Ottoman Empire. It accounts for 60% of the known violent extremist organizations, and its current crises are eroding the stability of previously secure states. The Iranian threat network continues to wield malign influence in Iraq, Yemen, and Lebanon. And with Russia, they continue to support the Assad regime in Syria. Iraqi security forces continue their battle with ISIS for territory that is still occupied by the so-called Islamic State. And the influx of refugees from Syria and Iraq has destabilized Jordan and Lebanon. All of this instability combines to make our partnership and cooperation with regional militaries absolutely essential. And you can be justifiably proud of the State Partnership Program's contributions to this effort in our area of responsibility. With our teammates from the Colorado Guard supporting activities in Jordan, with the National Guardsmen from Arizona, Montana, Virginia, and Mississippi supporting activities across the Central Asian subregion, our team is making tangible contributions to interoperability and partnership every day. We'd love to see the formation of additional partnerships with those partner nations who are not yet beneficiaries of this innovative and cost-effective approach. As critical as the State Partnership Program is, it's just one facet of the National Guard's many contributions to stability in the Central region. On any given day, we're responsible for between 18 and 22,000 troops and have administrative control of a great many more when you add up the Army personnel in the embassies and forces in Afghanistan. And by the way, Guardsmen and reservists make up about 40% of this number. When I assumed command, we were about to adopt a new theater Army MTO that cut our military manpower by 50%, eliminating our forward command posts of about 500 people. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that this MTO change, like all plans, was based on a few assumptions. And given our record for predicting the future, it should surprise no one that these assumptions were just a bit flawed. It was assumed, for example, that we would be out of Afghanistan, or down to a very low number by 2016. The reality is that the number of troops deployed in support of Operations Freedom Sentinel will increase. Another assumption was that Iraq would remain peaceful, somehow become prosperous after we pulled out in 2011. The reality is we're back in Iraq and Syria taking on the Islamic State. Troop levels and Operation Inherent Resolve continue to climb as we've now entered Phase 3, the defeat of Daesh, ISIS, of that operation. And a third assumption was that a nuclear deal with the Iranians would solve this most pressing of strategic problems in the region. The reality is that the Iranian threat network, Iran's state support of terrorism, and its proxy war with the GCC has proliferated. When those assumptions proved to be inaccurate in 2016, we found ourselves short a division command post, a mission command node that was essential for the tactical fight. The Army and National Guard Bureau worked with us to provide a solution. And that solution was the blue and gray soldiers of the 29th ID, led by Major General Blake Ordner and Command Sergeant Major Smith. In 2016, that outfit mobilized, trained, and deployed on short notice, from alert in August to boots on the ground in December. The first rotation of a division headquarters as Task Force Spartan. Flexible, adaptable, meticulous, the 29th ID worked hand in hand with our staff to hone the mission command infrastructure, permitting the Theater Army to widen its aperture at the operational level. And just this past July, Vic Braden and the 35th Infantry Division assumed the Task Force Spartan mission. And the unit once known as the Infantry Vanguard of Lieutenant General George S. Patton's 3rd Army, the Santa Fe Division, is now again one of Patton's own. Those 35th ID soldiers came in with a great attitude, and they are a tremendous team of talented people. Vic Braden's folks are building on the base that Blake Ordner's team established. And like the U.S. Army Central, of which it is now part, Task Force Spartan comprises a total Army effort. And it's proof positive that the vision of former Army Chief of Staff General Dennis Reimer has come to fruition. His vision, that of total Army integration, was expressed in 1998 as one team, one fight, and one future. I'd like to take a second and personally and publicly recognize the first Task Force Spartan commander, Blake Ordner, for the tremendous job that he did leading his organization and the incredible work by the 29th Infantry Division. Task Force Spartan is the embodiment of the leadership and emphasis on readiness that our current Chief of Staff, General Mark Milley, provided when he argued for putting more teeth into the total Army concept. Task Force Spartan is all about deterring malign influence in the Middle East, especially all about deterring malign influence in the Middle East, especially in the Arabian Gulf region. It's a unique, multi-component organization made up of active Army and National Guard units, rounded out by the U.S. Army Reserve. Above all, it's a success story because it is achieving its mission. I want to close my discussion by talking for just a minute about why I think the National Guard is a perfect fit for this mission, about the reasons why Blake and his team were so successful at the outset, and the reason why Vic and his team are off to such a promising start, and the reasons why, below the division level, we will continue to benefit from the deployment of Army National Guard formations in the CENTCOM AOR. As the Theater Army and Coalition Forces Land Component Command for U.S. Central Command, Army Central's mission is to shape the environment to improve access and interoperability, set the theater to deter adversaries, and to be prepared to transition to phase 1 of contingency operations. And while our active duty formations learn a great deal during their deployments with us, they are often comprised of younger, less experienced leaders. They're often finding out about each other at the same time they are learning their jobs. The Guard brings seasoned, cohesive teams to the fight. In many cases, folks who've worked together for years. And both the 29th ID and the 35th ID brought a level of teamwork that had clearly been matured and developed over time. They were able to fill gaps in their organizations with leaders who were proven commodities within the Guard. At brigade and below, the tangible benefits to the employment of National Guard forces are obvious. And these are probably the most well-known arguments for why, in some cases, Guard units are a better option than active duty units for specific requirements. A National Guard HIMARS or tank crew may spend as many as 6 to 8 years together on their weapon system, whereas an active crew may arrive in theater having been together less than a year. In the Guard today, today's tank driver is the loader 2 years down the road. In another 3 years, he's a gunner, and a little later, he's the tank commander, and he's never left that tank. I've been in all 3 fire direction centers in theater, and I will tell you that the Guard brigades and the battalions are the only ones using the full suite of digital fires capabilities. The added longevity and coherence of Guard weapons crews and combat support teams take on an added significance in the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility because of the new paradigm that has emerged following our experiences with counterinsurgencies in Afghanistan and Iraq. In his theater strategy, General Votel has termed that paradigm by, with, and through. Simply put, this is the prosecution of a campaign by host nation forces that rely on U.S. and coalition forces for enablers. Fires in particular, but also aviation, logistics, transportation, medical, capabilities that our partner nations, particularly the Afghans and the Iraqis, simply don't have in sufficient numbers or at required levels of proficiency. By, with, and through leads us to employ enabling capabilities and packages that are smaller than what doctrine envisions. And as you know, this can lead to increased risk. The goodness inherent in Guard units is that typically we are employing a team that is more mature, more coherent, and better integrated. And for me, those are factors that help mitigate the risk I just mentioned. You know, fires are always in high demand, and light HIMARS packages have supported operations in the Euphrates River Valley during the liberation of Mosul, at the Syrian tri-border area. They supported the counter-ISIS operations from Turkey with precision fires in the kinetic fight. Our Guard combat and general aviation support assets comprise another area that are also in high demand from U.S. joint forces in Afghanistan and Iraq as well. National Guard Apache and Black Hawk crews, as well as medevac platforms, have been task organized in small elements to provide both capability to Operation Inherent Resolve and to Operation Resolute support for integration into counterterrorism and counterinsurgency operations. Military engagement teams, a pure Guard capability, and as you know, selected from the staff of our maneuver enhancement brigades, facilitate theater security cooperation events in theater, providing or facilitating partner capacity building by building relationships with partner nation land forces. The 149th Met, from right here in Kentucky, led by Colonel Joe Gardner, just finished its rotation, transferring authority to the 648th Met from the Georgia Guard, the 9th military engagement team to serve in CENTCOM's area of responsibility. The 135th Expeditionary Sustainment Command out of Alabama, one of 2 Guard ESCs, is a recent addition to Task Force Spartan, led by Brigadier General Sylvester Cannon and Command Sergeant Major Kevin Griffin. They assume the mission of maintaining, providing fuel, munitions, and life support for both OIR and Operation Spartan Shield from the 316th ESC on the 24th of August. And we are anticipating the 1st National Guard Maneuver Brigade, the 155th Dixie Thunder Armor Brigade Combat Team, headquartered in Tupelo, Mississippi, which will join Task Force Spartan's team of teams, replacing 2nd Brigade 1st Armor Division next summer. You know, crew cohesion and longevity are tangible staples the Guard brings to the table, but I'd offer that there are intangibles as well. These stem from capabilities that our gifted civilian soldiers bring from their employment outside the Guard. Unlooked for but welcome in the complex environment into which they arrive, these men and women bring fresh perspectives and unconventional thinking from their civilian experiences. Major General Vic Braden is the 35th Infantry Division Commander, Kansas National Guard. Victor Braden, Deputy Attorney General for the state of Kansas, is the Chief Prosecutor for capital cases in his home state. Colonel Karen Berry of the Delaware National Guard is currently serving in one of our major subordinate commands, the 335th Signal Command, which, by the way, is an Army Reserve unit from East Point, Georgia. Colonel Berry joined the Guard over 30 years ago. As a college freshman, she joined because she said she needed the beer money. She stayed because she found herself a second family, a National Guard family. She married a Delaware State Trooper who's also in the Guard. A career educator, she told me that I've used my experience from the military to encourage high school students to consider serving their country. And I've used my experience as a high school teacher to develop a more patient, mentoring leadership style. The Guard supported me, she said, even as I volunteered to deploy with a Reserve Signal Command, because they knew that I would bring back the experience that I gained to Delaware when I redeploy. I mentioned the 149th Military Engagement Team from the Kentucky National Guard, which is rotating out of theater as we speak. When we needed a liaison officer for the General Headquarters in the United Arab Emirates, one of the company-grade staff officers in that formation, Captain Jack Rackow, was nominated and sent. Now, normally this is a field-grade job, but Jack isn't your typical Army captain. He's also a 20-year veteran of the Air Marshal Service. He brought a wealth of experience and, frankly, a sense of responsibility that is rare in a company-grade officer. And what's more, from his civilian job, he brought an understanding of complex systems and an incredible attention to detail. Jack went to work triangulating the requirements of the UAE Land Forces Commander, the Defense Attaché, and my staff. Our partnership with the UAE is one of our most solid and synchronized mill-to-mill relationships. Today, the United Arab Emirates is supporting an NTC rotation with helicopters for the first time in history. It is the first unit from the Middle East to participate in an NTC rotation. And Jack Rackow can take credit for some of that because he brought a special skill set to this role that enabled him to contribute. The 169th Fires Brigade from the Colorado National Guard is, as I mentioned earlier, the only fire direction center and theater operating on the full suite of digital fire systems. And this all starts with intelligence preparation of the environment. Sergeant Stephanie Heil left the Wisconsin Guard, where she worked intel analysis in the 32nd Red Arrow Infantry Brigade Combat Team, and she joined the Colorado Guard so that she could complete her degree at the University of Colorado. She is not your typical 35 Foxtrot sergeant. She's 31 years old and a fitness instructor with a master's degree in sports medicine from the University of Colorado. From her deployment in early January, she rebuilt the intel databases required so that her fire direction center, the most successful in theater, could put steel in target in over 300 successful fire missions into northern Syria, almost 1,500 weapons as of mid-August when I was last there. I began by saying that the Army would long ago have failed as an institution without the contributions of our reserve components and specifically the National Guard. And I believe this. And the reasons why I do are the Vic Bradens, the Karen Berrys, the Jack Rackows, and the Stephanie Howells, those citizen soldiers who form your ranks. It is their selflessness, their dedication to the total Army as an institution, and their commitment that makes the National Guard what it is. You can and should be proud of what they are doing downrange, and I want you to know that I certainly am. You know, when I do my battlefield circulation and I talk to our soldiers, it's always an emotional event for me. As you see, I've known nothing my whole life but our Army. And I am amazed at the special and unique sacrifices that our citizen soldiers make. It is still difficult for me to get my arms and head around how absolutely excellent they can be and still have completely other lives and responsibilities. They don't just deploy to Kuwait to do theater security cooperation, to do exercises, or to train. They are deploying into combat. And they are representing all of you and our Army well. And so again, know that Lieutenant General Garret has an incredibly soft spot in my heart for our Guard formations, that I've done my best, and although we'll never truly understand, look for opportunities and ways to support our Guardsmen. As was mentioned earlier, writing letters to employers, facilitating where I can virtual and physical job interviews, writing letters of recommendation for our soldiers. I am very, very proud of our Army, and I am very, very proud of the contributions that our citizen soldiers make on a daily basis. And again, I will finish where I started. It is not lost on me that you could have had anybody speak to you today. It is a true honor and one that I will cherish, the opportunity to speak to you all today. And I wish you all the very, very best. And I would ask those of you that pray, say a prayer for all of our folks and teammates who find themselves in harm's way today. Again, thanks.